Hi all, it's me, Fuzz the Piney. It's March, and that means it's MS Awareness Month. Normally, every year, I do videos on Facebook to spread awareness on MS. I'm kind of the um, social savvy or the mouthpiece for our small group of those with PPMS. Um, so I figured I'd do a bunch of videos about MS, and each one will have a different topic. So today we're going to go basic. We're just doing what is MS, because not a lot of people know what it stands for and what it is. And we're going to go over the different types of MS because even less people understand that there's more than one kind of MS. So we'll do that today, or we'll do that right now. I might record another video later and just post it another day. So if you see me wearing the same orange metal cat shirt, that's why. I probably recorded it after this one. The color for MS is orange. So if you want to represent people with MS, wear orange this month. If you love someone with MS, if you have MS, represent yourself with orange, orange, orange. I have an orange cat, so I'm representing the MS community all the time. He might be in our video. We'll see if he comes by. So, what is MS? Let's start there. MS stands for multiple sclerosis. And to be quite honest with you, I'm not sure what sclerosis means. I just know there's multiple of them. There's not just one sclerosis, there's a bunch. But multiple sclerosis is basically an immune disease that where it's like the opposite of AIDS. Let's just put it that way. You know how AIDS breaks down your immune system? Multiple sclerosis makes your immune system go crazy. So if there's nothing for it to attack, your immune system's attacking yourself because it thinks you are the intruder. And what it particularly attacks in MS and multiple sclerosis is the myelin sheath on your spinal cord. It's basically like the outside, like if you have a bunch of wires, you know how the wires have that plastic or rubber around it, so that way you don't get electrocuted. It's like that, but in your spine. So it holds all your nerves together within that myelin sheath. And what the immune system does with MS is it attacks that myelin sheath. And what happens, not just in your spine, but also in your brain, there's two places where MS resides. You can have MS in either your brain or your spine. If you're lucky, you have it in both. And I say lucky with a grain of salt. Kind of being sarcastic there. But we'll talk about that another day, about getting diagnosed and all that kind of stuff. But basically, what happens is MS, multiple sclerosis, your immune system attacks this myelin and starts damaging your nerves. So it's like you can have the perfect hardware, right? Like your body is all, strong and you got muscles and you're built well. You're just built like a beast, right? But then your software isn't so good because when your nerves get damaged, nothing really works. So, like, if you have a computer and something's frayed, something internal is fried, it's kind of the same thing. Humans are computers. We're just made of flesh instead of metal and other parts. But we are very intricate computers, and we have to remember that. Unfortunately, this is one of those diseases where it proves to you that we're intricate computers, just made out of flesh and bone. So basically, when the system crashes, it crashes. These things leave, well, when your own immune system attacks the myelin, it leaves a scar, and we call them lesions. You can have lesions on your brain and your spine, or both. And these lesions cause different symptoms, which is going to be the next video. It's going to be a long one. Unfortunately, we do have a lot of symptoms. And I'll explain a little bit more about that later. Not all of us have the same symptoms. It gets very murky. I'll explain it in a way that everyone understands what we go through as a community. But yeah, if I haven't said it yet, I do have MS. I posted a video before about getting my wheelchair and all this stuff. I don't know if I said I have multiple sclerosis or not, but I do. So this video is basically just about the basics of it, the bare bones, right? I'm talking a lot, but haven't gotten to much yet. There's actually 8, a lot of people say, oh, I know someone else with MS and they're not that bad, they're fine. You can't be that bad, you're just making things up. There are 8 different kinds of MS. And depending on how many lesions you have and how long you've had it, it kind of adds to the severity of the situation. The more symptoms you'll have, the more weird stuff going on, the more you're going to struggle. So let's go over the 8 kinds of MS. I figure that's a good place to start for this. The most common one is called RRMS. It means relapse-remitting MS. So you have time periods where you're totally fine, you're a normal human being. And then when you have a flare, like anyone who has any sort of disease or any issue, even psoriasis, like you'll get a flare up and it'll get worse. That's what a flare is. So in the MS world, flares are called relapses. So the most common one is this type, relapse-remitting MS. If you meet somebody with RRMS, or with MS, they're most likely to have the RRMS type. 85% of people with MS have this type of MS, where it's possible to function normally, but you're going to have flare-ups and it's going to suck. And you're going to feel all your MS symptoms where the lesions are, and it's going to be shitty. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for anybody. RRMS is not fun. You never know when there's going to be an attack or a flare-up. Stress triggers a lot of MS symptoms for all kinds of MS. Lots of things trigger MS symptoms, like the heat or the cold or whatever your body hates can trigger MS. Stress, being sick with something else, age, whatever. There's a lot of different things that can trigger your flare-ups, which I will go into as well when I get into the symptoms one next time. I think it'll make a little bit more sense. So that's the most common kind of MS. If your aunt's best friend's daughter has MS and she's fine. She most likely has RRMS, or relapse-remitting MS. She is not fine. She just looks fine for the time she's in remission. When you're in remission, you can live life as normal. You can also, there's many medications, which I'll go over in a different video. The medications and stuff we got to take for this. Relapse remitting has many medications available to them. So if you see any commercials on TV for MS drugs, it's literally only for relapse remitting MS, and they do not work for the other types of MS. But what they do is they halt the progression of, or not, I'm sorry, I should rephrase this. What they do is they halt relapses from occurring so frequently. So if you have relapses quite often, you won't have as many if the medication works for you. And there, like I said, there's so many different kinds of relapse remitting MS drugs, which I'm going to go over later. But the next group is SPMS, which is secondary progressive MS. 65% of people with relapse-remitting MS get SPMS when they're older. So secondary progressive MS means your MS now is no longer relapse remission. It literally is just downhill from there. So at a certain point, usually when you're older, or if you are under a lot of stress in life, or whatever kicks it into high gear, makes it go faster. SPMS, secondary progressive MS, is what happens at the end of your RRMS for 60% of people. So the other 40% of people with RRMS will just continue having relapses and remissions. 60% of people with RRMS, it will turn into secondary progressive MS, and it will just go downhill from there. Notice how I said it is called secondary progressive MS. That brings me to the third type. 10 to 15% of people with MS have primary progressive MS. That's the kind I have. I'm one of the 10%ers. Yay! I mean, being unique is not always a good thing. It means that we don't have a lot of studies done for us. We don't have the medication that, those with RMS have. We don't have a lot of the benefits of the regular MS community. But basically, primary progressive MS means there's no relapses and remissions. So when you have a symptom, you just have it. It doesn't go away, never feel better. It just goes downhill. And as you age and your lesions and more symptoms start to appear, you just collect them like trading cards, unfortunately. And they only get more severe as time goes on, and more in number, if that makes sense. We don't have periods of remission or normalcy. Primary progressive MS is a rough ride. Like I said, from the very beginning, it's just constant. There's no break, and we all wish we could still have the life we used to have, because we don't get breaks from this, So that's primary progressive MS, PPMS. So if someone tells you they have that kind, don't say, "Oh, you're fine." We're really not fine. Ever, really. We take a lot of things for our symptoms mostly, because there's not really any drugs for us to combat progressive MS, but we take a whole bunch of drugs for symptoms. I'm taking 8 different things right now. Like I said, I'll save that for the medications video. But PPMS is no joke. It just gets worse. And the next one is PRMS, which is 5% of people with MS. So PRMS means progressive relapsing MS. Basically, you have primary progressive MS, but you also have relapses. So what this means is you're going downhill, and then you have periods where it's really super awful, and then you just go back to regular crappy. Sounds weird. It's a nightmare, but it's a real thing. 5% of people with MS have that type. I don't know if I have that or not. I have periods where I'm really feeling cruddy, but it's usually because I skip my medication or something. So I think I just have primary progressive MS. PRMS is kind of brutal. Now I'm going to get into, those are the 4 main types of MS. I got to get into the other 4 types, which are very super rare, but they exist and they need to be talked about. There's CIS, which is clinically isolated syndrome, which means you'll have MS symptoms once. That's it. Never come back again. You're super lucky if that's all that you got. So CIS, MS, clinically isolated syndrome, multiple sclerosis. It sucks, but you're lucky you got that one. That's all I gotta say. It's rare though, but it does happen. The next one on my list is pediatric MS. Yeah, it sucks. Children get MS sometimes. I was one of those. So before I had primary progressive MS, I had pediatric MS. My first symptoms started appearing when I was 17. I had, the whole age of 16 was one of the most stressful times of my life. It was just bombardment, of stress when I was 16. So stress brings out MS stuff, and it sparked MS for me. So technically, I was still a child. I was a teenager, and I was 17 when I had my first symptoms. It was bad. That's for story time, which is also another video. I'll tell everyone my MS journey. It's pretty rough. I'm okay now, I guess, but at least I know what I'm doing now, and I know what I have. That's all that matters, because when you don't know, things are kind of rough in the healthcare world. But yeah, so that's pediatric MS. Now, the next 2 are pretty scary. Tumefactive MS is when your lesions are more like tumors than lesions, which means there isn't just a tear in your nerves. There's a tumor there. It's kind of scary. I don't know much about this, but I've heard of people who have had it. It is very rare. I don't know, no idea about the procedure for that, but I will look it up for the other video, with medications and procedures and whatnot. It's just scary. I can't imagine having a tumor every place where I have a lesion. I would have so many tumors, and that's terrifying to me. Anyway, this is the worst one in my opinion, and it's absolutely scary. It's called Marburg MS. If you have this type of MS, it's a very aggressive version of primary progressive MS, and you have 3 years left to live maximum. So, like, those of us with MS, at least primary progressive MS or secondary progressive MS, struggle a lot towards the end. It's not pretty. But if you have Marburg MS, it happens right away. It's very scary. It's like having pancreatic cancer. You know, once you realize you have it, you only have months. But you realize you have Marburg MS, you realize you maybe only have a year. So, shout out to those people. I feel really bad. Here I am with primary progressive MS, which sucks, but at least I can live a little longer. I feel really bad for those people. So, me, and I am going to be telling you about my experience in these videos as I go through these different topics. So out of all 8 types, I have one, and I used to have pediatric MS too. I also have primary progressive MS as my main diagnosis. I'm that rare 10%. Yay! I just say we're awesome. So we're the cool ones. But honestly, like I said, I'm the mouthpiece for the primary progressive MS crew, and they're all amazing people. All of them. Every single one of them. You know, we've lost some people over the past few years, but we all stick together and we're all there for one another and help each other through loss, and, you know, not just loss of the people in our group, but the loss of the use of our legs, let's say, the loss of the use of this or that, you know. And I will tell you some of those symptoms next time. That'll be the symptom video, but it's going to be long. We have a lot of symptoms. And I'll explain more about how and why we get certain symptoms and not others, and why no 2 people with MS are alike. Doesn't matter what kind of MS either. No 2 are alike. And it's called the snowflake disease for that reason. There's some of us, like my one friend, is very similar to me. He's on the other side of the world. Man, I feel bad for him because I'm going through it too. But we still, even us, we still have like a little bit of a difference, even though it's not much. But he's the only other person with primary progressive MS that has anything close to my list of symptoms. Anything close to it. So yeah, like I said, MS is very different for every person that has it. And I will go over the symptoms next time. What I did was I polled 200 people with primary progressive MS. And like I said, MS symptoms are across the board. So this is RRMS, primary progressive, secondary, blah, 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 blah. Okay. But I interviewed 200 people. I polled 200 people, participated in this willingly, to let the public know what their main symptoms are. So I will have that list for you next time. I hate to say it, but there's a lot of symptoms, and I'm going to try to explain the ones that people may be a little uncertain over about what I'm talking about. Some are pretty obvious, like I'm not going to have to explain it. But yeah, I'll do that for the next video. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a great night, a great day, wherever you're at. And peace, love, Love, peace, and chicken grease, as we used to say. All right. Bye, guys.